How you
How are
doing?
you?
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Oh,
All right. Well, first of all, thanks for joining us. It's another wild start to the Global Biodiversity Festival, and it's so great to have you joining in with us. I'm going to give you a little intro in a second, but
sure,
yeah, thanks for giving us a little bit of time today.
of course. I'm glad to be
Oh,
here. Thank you so much for doing this.
okay. For a little bit of housekeeping, really quickly to get started. Those tuning in online, use the hashtag Global BioFest. Put it out there. We want to see who's in action. Don't forget, get outside, snap some pictures in your neighborhood if you haven't already, and post them with that hashtag Backyard Bio. Callie, if you went outside right now, what's some of the things that you would see?
Oh gosh, I'm in Washington, D.C. right now, so I would see European starlings, I would see robins, I would see about 25 trees and a really empty street.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
Although if you looked at my virtual background, this is actually what I'm going to be talking about, how our viewers can help protect. This is actually the Ecuadorian Chocó rainforest. So I wish that I could see this, but unfortunately it's just behind me
All
in my
right. Well,
imagination.
let's get a nice official introduction in for you. But Callie Broaddus joining us today. She's the founder of Reserva, the youth land trust to empower young people around the world to take solution-based action towards solving our climate and biodiversity crisis. So she and her team are currently working to create the world's first entirely youth-funded nature reserve. Callie, that's so amazing. We're excited to learn a little bit more, and we're definitely going to have some questions for you today.
Awesome. Well, you know me, I sometimes get very chatty, so I'm going to try to blaze through this and see how we do. So I'm actually going to turn off my virtual background here because I'm going to have a few things to show you. So you'll have to excuse my tiny DuPont circle kitchen. It's I'm in a very small apartment. So I'm going to turn off my virtual background here. There we go. Here we are. All right. So should I just dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. All right. So everyone who's been watching, I hope everyone's been tuning in. The speakers have been absolutely incredible for this Global Biodiversity Festival. But you will have already heard how absolutely amazing biodiversity is, the life on our planet, how critical it is to our survival as a species, to the health of our ecosystems and to our economies, our global health, and to preventing pandemics like we're in now. So I'm not going to spend much time talking about that at all because you can just rewind this whole Zoom and see everything that's come before me. So instead, what I'm going to do is dive into the nitty-gritty of how we can actually protect it physically, literally. What can you do today or this week to make a difference? So I am going to just sort of back up and tell you a little bit about where I grew up and how I got to be where I am, leading a group of amazing youth from around the world to protect this incredible place that you saw behind me in the Chocó. So I grew up in Warrenton, Virginia, just a really rural, small place. I was, we grew up in the country with woods, and I was always outdoors. And I was very lucky that I had a class when I was little called OSHA, Outdoor Conservation, Ecology, and Wildlife. And we would go on walks every week where we would find owl pellets and dissect them. We'd find trees that beavers had cut down with their teeth and pick up the wood chips. And it was a really exploratory sort of upbringing. And so I was always really in love with nature. And I have with me that I must have set down, or maybe I'm sitting on. They vanished. I have with me, I put them over here. That's useful. Okay, I have with me a few props. So I actually started a club when I was little, and this is relevant, I promise. But I started a club when I was little called the Nature Nuts, and I actually have my binder from 3rd grade here and one of my notebooks. And I plastered it in stickers, of course. This is our logo, the Nature Nuts. But we did a lot of protecting of the killdeer outside, and we did all sorts of nature-y stuff. But I also had another obsession, and that was horses. This is my Nature Nuts binder, completely plastered in horses. And so when I was little, all I wanted was to buy a horse. And my parents told me, horses are really expensive. We can't afford to do that. But if you raise $1,000, sure, we'll look into it. We'll see what we can do. So that started in me this like burning desire to make money, to figure out how I could raise money for the thing that I desperately wanted. And so I started doing bake sales, doing yard sales. I stole everything out of my mom's garden and took it to the end of the driveway and did vegetable sales. When we went to dinner out at Pizza Hut or wherever, I always brought my box, which was decorated in horses and a little slit on the top, and I would leave it at the host stand and just say, if anyone comes, could you please ask them to donate to my fund for me to buy a pony? And I don't think that ever raised a whole lot of money, but it did a little bit, little by little over the years. When I was 10 years old, I finally hit my benchmark of raising $1,000. And I'll always remember going to the bank that day with a cigar box with a lifty lid full of cash and coins that one by one, we added them up, and dollar by dollar, we finally counted to 1,000. And that kind of started my journey of horseback riding. So that is relevant. I didn't realize it at the time, but both my love of nature and that sort of entrepreneurial drive would greatly inform what I would do next. So I became a serious horseback rider. I wound up going to college and studying architecture and seemingly kind of found my way away from the nature space. But there's something about your last year of college that really makes you rethink everything that you care about and what you're doing. And I realized I needed to get back to nature. So I wound up leaving architecture, leaving everything I had studied, and getting a job at National Geographic Kids. And I started designing books about nature and wildlife, animals like this one, and the underwater animals like this one. And I just fell in love with teaching kids about nature and inspiring young people to care about the world. But while I was there, something really devastating and formative happened. And that was my younger sister contracted a deadly and aggressively fatal cancer. This is her. This is Finley. And when she was 17 years old, she got this horrible news. And Finley was also a huge environmentalist. She was a campaigner for climate change action, and growing up in our really rural area, that was actually kind of a difficult thing to convince people to care about. So when she got sick, she thought, I just want to do something. I just want to do something to make a difference. So do you think that maybe instead of people donating to my medical bills or sending me flowers, we could get them to donate to a fund for the climate? And we thought, sure, maybe. I don't know if people around us are really going to be interested in that, but we'll see. And so she set a goal of raising $18,000 by her 18th birthday. And on March 12th, 2014, when we revealed the total of the 432 donors who donated, it was almost $70,000. So that story continues, and we've actually, Finley's fund has given out over $250,000 now toward organizations that make a big impact on climate change. But that definitely sparked something in me where I realized that young people, Finley, myself to a much lesser degree, do have a financial power. And I don't think that's something that organizations around the world and governments around the world are really giving big enough credence to. And so I started thinking about how I could kind of make something of that. And a few years later, a group called Rainforest Trust asked me to join their youth, or their council. And I was so floored. I had no idea why. And so I thought back to this nugget of an idea and realized I'm the only person here on this council who has an experience with youth through National Geographic. And it dawned on me that no one had ever tried to do a reserve, protect an area of rainforest or of any wild habitat entirely using the efforts of young people. And so that became my new mission. And I quit my job and I launched this organization called Reserva. So just to sort of blaze into this, Reserva is an organization that works to empower young people through conservation, education, and storytelling. And so we have actually partnered up with National Geographic Campaign for Nature on our sort of impact storytelling side to try to make an influence at the UN Convention on Biological Diversity. And I will mention a little bit more about that later, because that's something that you can actually do to help. But first, we made a partnership with Rainforest Trust. And we said, okay, we'd like to do this reserve. Is that crazy? Will you help us? And they said, absolutely, we have the perfect partner for you. His name is Javier Roballo. He is the director of Fundación Ecominga. And he has this incredible place in the Ecuadorian Chocó rainforest that needs to be protected. It's 244 acres. It's the first 244 acres of a planned 1,200 acre expansion to an existing reserve. And it's chock full of butterflies with bright blue wings, of new species of orchids, like this one called it's a Dracula genus orchid with these crazy long petal spine things. That's a completely new species. And just so much green space. Endangered, this is an endangered lizard. This is the most endangered plant in Ecuador. It's a type of orchid, and I'm blanking on the name, but there are only between 10 and 100 of them left in the wild, and these exist on our site. And so we gathered a group of youth from around the world, and we wound up launching this initiative to save this particular piece of rainforest. And we did the math and realized, it actually only takes about $5 to save the size of a rainforest in this area, about the size of a studio apartment or a small one bedroom, 600 square feet. All you need to donate is $5. So we thought that's pretty accessible. And so we went down to this site, and I'm actually going to screen share with you here for a sec, just to show you what it kind of looks like. Let's see, screen share. There we go. So this is what it looks like there. This is our expedition team. Javier, Carter. There are more of us, but this is this really gives you a good look of what it looks like there. It is muddy, it is wet, but it is absolutely teeming with life. This is how our expedition went. It was muddy, wet. I've just never, ever been so wet. This is Carter's boot getting completely lodged in mud, and it's a long, long hike to get through this place. But while we were there, we actually, let's see, I'm just gonna stop sharing here. We found 3 new species of orchid. We also found this guy who had been previously discovered by Ecuadorian scientists, but we found him again on this reserve. And this is a really exciting frog. It's a Helocyrtus frog, which is a really interesting genus. And it currently doesn't have a name. It's not yet published. It's going to be published very soon. And the really cool thing is this scientist has offered us the opportunity to name it. So please, after this, follow Reserva, because we're still working out how we're going to do this. Maybe you'll have some good suggestions, but we'd like to use this frog to help save his habitat. So yeah, please follow. It's at Reserva YLT, because we're going to ask for your help in naming this frog. So I also want to play for you a clip of Javier and why he thinks that youth are important. So Joe, if maybe you can just tell me if this sound is on. This is just a 1-minute video.
Yeah, Callie, just before you do the share, there's a little box you can tick at the bottom when the screen.
Oh, share computer sound. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to share this. Oh, I have to type in my password for that. All right. There we go. Nope, that's the wrong password.
That's a problem with having a lot of different.
I've never done this before.
It's just because it's the first time you're trying it. It shouldn't do that for you in the future.
Now screen share. Okay, so I'm just going to shut up and let you listen.
My name is Javier Roballo. I'm working in Ecominga Foundation, and I'm in charge of these type of projects.
Sorry, I just skipped forward.
Roballo. I'm working in Ecominga Foundation, and I'm in charge of the Reserva project and Dracula Reserve. One of the new projects that we have is to involve young people, considering that the next generation needs to be involved from the very beginning of these type of projects to have a long-term impact. We cannot transmit ideas and knowledge and concepts if we are working alone. We need to work with all the different partners that we have, and young people, it's in a different stage. They are not waiting, they are taking actions, and this is the moment, and this is a place to have young people that wants to be scientists, young people that wants to make their own effort, people that wants that her voice must to be feel it outside. We cannot go to big meetings and say that we want to involve young people if we don't give the chance. Now is the moment. We don't have time to make mistakes, and young people will provide us 20 years more of actions. And next generation need to be in charge to the next generation also. That's the moment.
So that's our partner. That's Javier, and I just couldn't have said it any better than him. That's why it matters that we engage young people in conservation. And when I say engage them in conservation, I don't mean you hear the phrase give kids a seat at the table, give youth a seat at the table, but typically that usually means a seat at the kids' table. You know, the kind of, we'll have a conference, and then there's also going to be a youth conference, and you can present us something that maybe we'll consider. But so far, you know, we've definitely seen that young people have a voice that's worth listening to, and young people are being recognized around the world for the strength of their voice. But the problem is, like, governments still aren't completely listening. They're not really hearing what we have to say. And so my thought was that maybe if we show that we have financial power as well, and that we can lead the way by actually protecting these areas and just putting our heads down and starting to work towards solutions, maybe they'll listen to us. So I know that I'm running out of time, but I just want to say a few things about the young people that are working with me on this particular project. So they range from kids who are 7 years old. I have a pair of youth council members in India who are 7 and 9, named Junia and Keanu, and they scrapped together their savings and gave me $3 each in Indian money, of course, but $3 each, which is enough to protect a whole classroom-sized area of rainforest each. And they have been working really hard on creating a YouTube series to explain why nature is important to kids their age. And then I also have a pair of youth council members who are 8 and 10, and they did a bake sale and raised $200 on their street. So kids are making an impact from, you know, this age to that age. And then I also have an 18-year-old who just yesterday, or what day is today? Sunday, Friday, we put on a concert that was his own idea, saying, why don't we put on a concert to raise money for conservation? I'm like, okay, that's kind of a difficult thing to do, but we'll give it a go. And well, we put on that concert. We pooled our resources together, pulled together a bunch of other youth council members and all of our efforts together, and we were able to raise $850. Rainforest Trust matches every dollar we bring in. So that put in over $1,700 for the rainforest, enough to save over 2.5 acres. So that's the kind of impact that young people can have. There are 2.5 billion young people on the planet between like 6 and 24. And so acting together, if we get the word out, I think we can make a massive difference. I just want to say one more thing. You don't need to have money or to be able to even fundraise to make a difference. I know many people are listening from all around the world, and that's not always possible where you are. Certainly not possible necessarily in the area where we're working. So we launched a campaign, and that's what I mentioned before, that National Geographic is supporting. It's called the 1 Million Letters campaign. And what we're asking is for you to write a letter saying what you love about nature and why world governments need to commit to protecting at least 30% of our planet by 2030. And if you send us that letter, we will match it with $3 toward the reserve, which is, again, enough to protect about the size of my apartment, 400 square feet or so. And then we'll take your letters. We're trying to raise about 1 million of them, and we're going to bring them to the Convention on Biological Diversity to make sure that your voice is heard at that UN level. So I know it can be really hard to stay motivated right now with all of the bad news, especially all the bad news for nature. But it's really important that we put our heads down and focus on solutions, because we can't afford to have people like you who care to be less motivated. And the biggest lie anyone can tell you is that you're too small or too young or too inexperienced to make a difference. Here I am as a horseback rider with an architecture degree, now leading this organization. So it really doesn't matter where you come from, it just matters what you care about. So thanks.
All right, Callie, that was awesome. Amazing work that you're doing. Amazing to hear just a small sample of the youth that you're working with and what they're doing. I can imagine that you could probably fill 3 days worth of this festival stories from all around the world that you're collecting of youth who, and I think that's what we're seeing is this generation is really switched on in a new way. And the quicker we can get them into positions of power, the sooner we can start seeing even more good things happening.
No doubt about that. Absolutely.
Great. So a real theme that we've seen over the last 3 days now is passionate conservationists, scientists, explorers who took a risk to go into the field that they wanted to make good things happen. So you had a stable job with National Geographic, but you were passionate about this and you took that leap. Can you tell us a little bit about what compelled you to make that leap?
God, it was terrifying. Yeah, it's really hard to leave a stable job that you love. I mean, that's the luckiest job in the world, designing kids' books for National Geographic. It was a job I loved with coworkers I loved for a company I loved. But I had made this personal commitment to my sister. I didn't tell her, but this is the commitment that I made when she passed away at 18. I just knew that I had to commit everything I had. And if I ever had a good enough idea that might make an impact, I was obligated to give it a go. And I didn't know where it would lead. I didn't know if I would lose all my savings, but I felt obligated to give it a go. So I worked for about a year at National Geographic while I was forming this idea. And I actually kind of shopped it around the entire organization saying, like, please, will you just give me a job doing this? We can do this together. And eventually every door they said, not in my division, but maybe the next one. And finally they said, you know what, just go do this on your own. Just go do it. Maybe you can apply back for a grant or something. And so, yeah, it was pretty scary actually, leaving, knowing that I probably wouldn't have a salary or any income for about a year. And I have basically, been just working through all my savings, but to me, it's worth it because all I have to lose is money, but what I have to gain is an incredible army of young people who are now more motivated and believe in themselves and have made a tremendous impact on the rainforest and on biodiversity.
Yeah, absolutely amazing, Callie. You're doing incredible work. What I've watched happen in the last few months is incredible, and the momentum's only going to keep snowballing. So thank you for what you're doing, and I look forward to helping out any way we can here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So,
thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me on. And if anyone wants to follow us and get involved, I'm happy to talk to you and help you figure out how you can use your entrepreneurial spirit and figure out the best fundraiser for you. It's just reservaylt.org and at reservaylt. So get in touch. Thanks.
Perfect. We still have a minute or two, Callie, and I'm not going to let you go that
really?
quickly. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We're just running a total stream now. We're doing live handoff, so it's bought us a little bit more time with each speaker.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Absolutely. But I want to get into the rainforest where you were in Ecuador.
Mm-hmm.
You took one of our satellite units with you, lined it up, raining a little bit, and then you were able to beam in live into classrooms from the rainforest. It looked like an amazing experience that you were having. take us into that rainforest one more time and just
Oh my God.
explain that biodiversity in words.
Okay. You know what I'll do? I will actually just I'll just put up a picture here that I just have on my desktop. Here. This is the very first moment that we stepped onto our site. So we started hiking up this trail that was incredibly steep, and it took us about 3.5 hours to get up to the top of the ridge where the edge of our sight line started, this area that we're actually working to protect. And the moment we got on the trail, it started to rain. And about 2.5 hours in, it started to get so steep and so slippery that we actually had to determine whether or not it was safe to go on. And I actually have a video of where I made Lucy and Carter, the two youth council members who joined me, sign a release by looking into the video and saying, I promise that if I die, it's not your fault. And but we made it to the site edge, and it's completely lush. It is so loud. It is vibrant. It is full of life. And the first thing we found was the den of a spectacled bear. So, or an Andean bear, depending on what word you use. And so it was a really triumphant moment. We were drenched to the core. I had left almost all of my camera equipment behind because it was just getting too wet and there was no point in bringing it. But on the way down, we stumbled across this, which is, you might not think it's anything special, but if you look smack dab in the middle of the screen, right here where I'm circling, that actually is a brand new species of orchid. And on the walk down, our partner Javier, whom you met earlier, he stopped. He'd been kind of inspecting every fallen log, because in this area, the canopy has not been studied at all, like not even a little bit at all. Everything up in the canopy is a complete mystery. So he's been looking at all these fallen logs, and here he stopped and he said, oh, wait, Marco. And he called our orchid specialist, he's 27 years old. And Marco came over and he looked and he just said, oh, no way, that's new, that's new. So it's about a 1 millimeter wide orchid, and it's new to science. And that is kind of the wonder that you get from walking through this rainforest. Yes, it's completely wet. Yes, sometimes your boots fall off and you get your socks stuck in the mud. Yes, sometimes you get bot flies, or you get, gross stuff in your hair. And you don't have cell phone service for about a 7-hour drive. But then you can walk into the middle of the woods and find this and completely discover a new species just on the side of the trail. So this particular site, I just want to give a huge shout out to the scientists who've been studying this area. It's not the safest place in the world to be. It's right on the border of Colombia. And, this is an area that has had some violence in the past, but this particular site, they've been doing so much hard work monitoring for poaching. It has critically endangered brown-headed spider monkeys. It has endangered black and chestnut eagles. It has a critically endangered species of toad, another endangered species of toad that was thought to be extinct for 25 years before they found it on this site. They recently found a bright yellow, blue-eyed robber frog on this site that was new to science and hasn't been found anywhere else. They just found a new genus of rat on this site. They found a new species of forest mouse on this site. These are the areas that we need to protect for future generations, because they're disappearing. This is the highest area of rate of deforestation in all of South America, and it's one of the most biodiverse places in the world. So we need to protect this sense of wonder for the next generation, because they deserve the right to discover new species too.
Absolutely. I knew you'd nail it with that description. Thank you so much, Callie. What a beautiful place, worth protecting. Keep doing what you're doing, and can't wait to hear what happens next. Thank you so much, Callie.
Thanks so much, Joe. This is awesome. I'm definitely going to stay tuned.
All right. We'll catch you later.
Bye.